Hello and welcome to another book review. This week I'll be reviewing Katherine Addison's The Goblin Emperor. I'll talk a little bit about the author. I'll give a very brief sketch of the plot, no major spoilers. I will go into what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I recommend the book to, and I'll finish it up by talking about what I will be reading next time. This is the first novel I've read by the author Katherine Addison. I believe that is a pen name. She also has released, I looked a little up on Wikipedia, she's also released one or two other fantasy series. This book is by far her most well-known book. I believe she received a fairly prestigious award a few years back for it. It is a standalone novel. As of right now, I don't know if that's going to change if there's plans for a sequel, but as of right now, it's a standalone novel. What is the book about? The book is about a exiled, half goblin, half elf character named Maya who becomes the titular goblin emperor after his father is murdered. And the book is really about him understanding the courtly world and his place in it and his family's place in it. And so that's just a real brief sketch of the plot. What did I like about the book? I thought that initial mystery of who is the murderer of Maya's father, I thought was strong enough to push the book through. That concept itself, as far as an outsider coming into a kingdom and kind of finding their place, isn't really anything new. It's very similar. In fact, I read N.K. Jemisin's 100,000 Kingdoms, and it's a very similar premise to that to start off. They go in wildly different directions after that, but the premise is similar, and I think that's a strong enough hook to get people into the novel. I think that the characters, there are many likable characters in this, and you do find yourself rooting for Maya to really understand and become a good emperor, and there are many different kinds of relationships to the book. So Maya has relationships with his court staff. He has relationships with servants, with guards, with advisors. He has relationships with family members, and they are all slightly different. So I did enjoy that, and I did think that was handled well. I liked the narrator did a good job of when different characters came on screen of speaking different voices and kind of making you understand who was on screen and making you understand who was on screen at that point made you be able to distinguish the characters a little bit easier than I think maybe would have been possible without it. What did I not like about the book? This is a little bit of a difficult book to read because I do see there are a lot of good things about it. It's just one of those things that's not really my cup of tea necessarily. It is a YA novel, and it is more about kind of politics and courtly intrigue, which is not really how I like my fantasy. I really like my fantasy more swords and sorcery. But it was fine. But most of the things I'm not going to like I didn't like because they fell under that heading. It's just not really my thing necessarily. And part of that was it just felt like there were too many characters. It was difficult sometimes to understand the importance of some of the characters who were in the novel. I felt the novel kind of dragged. It was a little bit longer than it should have been. I will say that she definitely had a lot of ideas, and I think that part of what was good about the book is that she did include different factions of the city, and I think different factions each had their own different ideologies, and I think that was handled well. And I think there was clearly enough material. If she had wanted to do 2 or 3 books, she could have done it. But she kind of made it into one book, and I felt that because of that, there was definitely some stuffing done. And because of that, like I said, there were some characters I just couldn't really quite understand how their importance fit into the novel. She also, I think, didn't do quite a good enough job of explaining the differences between the goblins and the elves. They have kind of 2 different cultures, and it's kind of implied that they're not on the best of terms, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more explaining why there was animosity between the 2 groups. I also think that she could have included more of the technology, including the steamships and the magic, a little bit better. It's definitely in the book, but it's just not there all that much. like I touched on earlier, the mystery overall is I think a good push that gets you through the novel, and that's kind of the thing that kind of keeps you coming back to wanting to know why this is happening and excuse me, the perpetrators of this crime. So I think she did a good job there. But it's not the most original plot in the world, like I said, but I think it gets the job done. Who would I recommend the book to? I think this book would actually be really good for high schoolers, maybe senior or junior high schoolers, or freshmen or sophomores in college. I think if you like courtly intrigue, you're going to like this book. I think the characters are, like I said, are all likable enough to where you find yourself rooting for them to succeed, which I think is good. So I think there's definitely a heart and a warmth to this book. I will say there is one or two points in the book that are somewhat violent. There is a character who goes through a ritual suicide. So if you have a person in your life who would be sensitive to that, I would maybe try to read that first and determine whether or not you think it would be something that would be triggering to them. So that's really who I would recommend it to. I think if you're also just like a fantasy completist and you just eat up all kinds of fantasy, then I think this will be good. This to me struck me as something that almost didn't need to be in a fantasy world. It could have been just it could have been humans in fictional countries or something. I mean, it's pretty light on the fantasy elements, I found. So that's pretty much the review. If I did not mention it before, I really enjoyed the narrator for this. I think he did a great job. There's a lot of different characters, and he found ways to find different voices within that to portray each one. I thought that was really well done. So overall, that's my review of the novel. I will be reviewing Stephen and Owen King's Sleeping Beauties. I will be reviewing that next time. Should be finishing that up in a couple days. I have a long drive and we just kind of cranking through that on the audiobook. Until then, please like or subscribe to the channel. Please follow me on Twitter. And I will see you guys next time.